Hello. So today we are moving on to a new topic. On the screen at the moment, you can see all the topics that we have completed so far, which are all to do with paper 1. And for this next lesson, we are skipping to a topic in paper 2. Here we go. And it's this topic over here, number 8, exchange and transport in animals. So we're going to look and see what makes an efficient transport and exchange system in our body. We're going to look at factors affecting diffusion, which is for the triple award only. We're going to have a look at our circulatory system. So that's the heart and the blood vessels pumping and transporting everything around the body. We're going to look at the structure of the heart, and then we're going to focus on that incredibly important chemical reaction called cellular respiration. So that's the context of today's lesson, and we are going to focus on efficient transport and exchange. So you might want to pause and write down the topic heading and today's lesson topic, efficiency, exchange, and transport, with today's date all beautifully underlined. Okay, now, what I want you to do is I want you to take a moment. You have done a lot of biology over the course of your school career. I want you to think, what is breathing? If you had to explain to somebody in year 7 perhaps, how would you explain breathing? How would you explain respiration? What would you say digestion is? And what is excretion? Now, perhaps pause the video and just roughly in your books, just write some notes about those just to see what you remember. Just some keywords will be great. Okay. Now, I wonder if a few of you have gone, respiration, breathing, aren't they the same thing? Well, a lot of people make that mistake, but as amazing biologists, you are never going to make that mistake, because you're going to remember that breathing is what happens in my lungs. It's actually gas exchange. I'm taking in oxygen and I'm breathing out carbon dioxide. Respiration, that's the chemical reaction that happens in the cells. For example, in the mitochondria of a cell in my baby toe. It's a chemical reaction where glucose that you've eaten with your food, that's been digested and transported around your body to the little toe, reacts with the oxygen that you've breathed in through your gas exchange system, that's transported around in your blood system to that little cell in the toe. And then the glucose and the oxygen bash into each other. They collide with each other successfully to produce carbon dioxide and water. And in that process, all the chemical energy that was stored inside that glucose molecule is released as energy. And that's that energy that keeps us all full of energy and going and moving. It is the energy that helps to keep our body warm. It's almost like a fire that we've got to keep going to keep our body at a constant temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. And mammals and birds are the only vertebrates that are able to keep a constant temperature. I just want to say at this point, marking for the exam boards, never say energy is produced. Never, ever, 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 ever say energy is produced. It's always just transferred or released. If you say produced energy, we don't give you a mark. So don't make that mistake. So what then is digestion? Well, some people say digestion's eating, but eating is ingestion. Pooing is egestion. Digestion is breaking down your food. Remember, I can't have a pizza moving around in the blood vessels in my arm. But what I can have is the starch and the protein broken down into soluble bits that are small enough to be dissolved and move across the wall of my small intestine into my bloodstream to then go to my little toe. I seem to have a thing about my little toe at the moment. And of course, excretion. Some people get excretion and pooing mixed up. Excretion is about getting rid of liquid waste. So it could be sweating. It could also be weeing, so urinating. So in your urine, there's a lot of waste that your body doesn't need. So make sure, as good biologists, you don't get that mixed up. Okay, so where is this taking us to? Well, any excuse for me to have a picture of the rather gorgeous Johnny Wilkinson on the field. I mean, just look at those thighs. Okay, right, enough of that. Let's get back to the biology of Johnny Wilkinson. Now I want you to think for a moment, and you can draw your own hero, idol, whoever you perhaps fancy. I don't know who's the latest boy band hero at the moment. But in the middle of your page, I want you to draw your person. And I want you to pause for a moment and think, what kind of substances are transported around your amazing human? Okay? Have a think and then restart the video. Okay, now, hopefully you've got a couple of ideas. Let's see how that compares with mine. What we're going to do, if you put your picture in the middle of a page, I'm going to annotate all around this picture. Okay, so keep an eye on the sides. What you might want to do is let me go through the whole slide and then you can pause it and copy the notes. So maybe just sit back, relax, and just take it in for a moment. Okay, here we go. So the first thing, oxygen. Oxygen is what allows us to be alive. And oxygen, of course, is produced by photosynthesis. By photosynthesis. Takes in carbon dioxide from the air and oxygen is released into the air. And that's why planet Earth can have life on it. So oxygen is breathed in from the air. And why do we need it? We need it for that process I've just spoken about of aerobic respiration in the cells, that chemical reaction in your cells that releases energy. And in Johnny Wilkinson's thighs, in his muscle cells, where he's doing so much work, you can see that from his gorgeous muscles, there is a lot of mitochondria in those muscle cells because they need to release a lot of energy to allow him to go around and win World Cups. And then, of course, we breathe out carbon dioxide. So that comes from our body and gets transported around from our cells, and eventually we breathe it out. So this is, in fact, the waste product of aerobic respiration. Remember, you've got glucose plus oxygen produces carbon dioxide and water. Just thinking about oxygen, remember what percentage of air is oxygen? It's 21%. 78% is nitrogen, 21% is oxygen, and less than 1% is carbon dioxide. Okay, now our next substance transported around our body, and in fact that a lot of our body is made up of, is water. We are made up of at least 70% water. We take water when we drink, and really important, especially now, that you are keeping your water consumption up, because if your brain even just dehydrates by 1%, you don't focus as you could do, and you can start getting all headachy. So if you're feeling like that because of your online learning, pause and go and get some water. Okay, so we take in water through our food, through our drink, and water is also produced during chemical reactions in our body. For example, in respiration, glucose plus oxygen produces carbon dioxide and water. But it's also needed for a whole load of chemical reactions in our body. We are one big chemical machine. And these chemical reactions that build up and break down in our body are often referred to as metabolic reactions. So if you hear that term, it really is just about the chemical reactions that build things up, break things down in our body. Now, there will also be mineral ions transported in your body. Now, mineral ions, we get these from our diet if we're having a healthy diet, and they're only really needed in very, very small amounts in our body. So it's not like starch and glucose, the carbohydrates, or the fats or the proteins that we need in higher amounts. But they're essential for keeping our body healthy. So for example, if we don't take enough calcium, calcium ions, we'll have weakened bones, and we'll particularly feel that when we get older. So we might develop something called osteoporosis, and we could even shrink as a result. Iron ions are an important element found in the hemoglobin molecule. Now, the hemoglobin molecule grabs onto the oxygen on the red blood cell and transports the oxygen around the body. So if you don't have enough hemoglobin, you start to become anemic. This is great revision of another topic. And then potassium ions. Now, note I'm using the word ions because you know what happens from chemistry. If I put potassium in water, and our body's 70% water, it literally will blow up into a purple lilac flame. And we don't want that. So all of these ions I'm talking about are ions that are found in compounds. So we're not eating calcium, which is a metal. We are eating a calcium ion, a calcium compound. And the potassium ions, we need those for muscles and for our nervous system. Okay, and then it comes to urea. Now, this is perhaps one substance that we haven't spoken about too much. Urea is formed during the breakdown of proteins. Remember all those proteins that we get in our diet from that big steak or from the beans that we're eating? And as these proteins are broken down, it forms quite a nasty substance that our body doesn't like, called urea. And this urea is then filtered from our blood by our kidneys and is then excreted in our urine as a waste product. There are also lots of dissolved food molecules. So for example, anything that we've ingested, remember we eat it, it's ingesting. So it could be glucose. Remember the starch is broken down into glucose, which we need for energy. Amino acids from the proteins are used for growth and repair. Or there could be glycerol and fatty acids from the lipids that have broken down that provide a store of energy. Now, of course, there are other substances in our body like hormones moving around, but these are the key ones that I want you to focus on for this topic. So pause this video and copy down these notes. Once you are done, so that I don't run out of recording time, start video 2.